It's Monday and it's time for Stories Come Alive. So I just have to say it is September 25th when this video is being done in Chicago, and I am still in a tank top and just went for a 45-minute walk in 85-degree weather. So how awesome is this? So here we are today, and I'm so excited to share with you the birth of Young Living. This is our third week together, and so excited to get to this nitty-gritty. We're into the book now. So here's a picture. There was a lot of excitement as Young Living started to grow. Check out the beginners. Here they are, right? And then, oh, so exciting. Young Living headquarters in Spokane, Washington, 1989. Does anybody recognize any of those people? I know some of them. Yes. And then look over here. Gary was a guest speaker at many expos and seminars. So do you see his table and his expo display? He started just like we are out there doing. So very familiar to us, right? So the birth of Young Living. So when Gary started his new business, he was a one-man band, I should say. From Monday through Thursday, he answered the phone and took orders and then packed them and had them ready for shipping. He filled the oil bottles by hand in his little lab and hand wrote the labels for them. Hand wrote labels. He did everything he could, and that which he couldn't do, he contracted out piece by piece. Thursday evenings, he would put the answering machine on and fly out to a different city such as Phoenix, Los Angeles, or Dallas, and then travel around with his members and friends like Eldon and Nancy, Loretta, Anna Maya, doing meetings to grow his new little business. So I have personally met Eldon and Nancy, awesome, and Anna Maya. And Sunday night, he'd return home to get ready for all the orders that he hoped would start coming in on Monday. Once a month, he would spread all the orders out on the living room floor and calculate the commissions by hand. That continued for months until the business had grown enough that he felt he could start hiring a few employees. Nice. So he was doing all the work just like we do as distributors now, but I know he was thinking big. Are you thinking big? That's a good question. It was truly a simple beginning with real intent to give something to the world that he loved and that he believed would benefit mankind. So here's another picture for you. Can you see it? There it is. In August 1992, even with a broken ankle, Gary took the first group of members to France to see the lavender fields and distillation. Nice. So his first trip with distributors in 1992 to France, to Provence, France. I'm going to try my best. I have a translator up on my computer to see if I can pronounce all these French names in this chapter. So bear with me, especially my French friends. Be kind and don't giggle too hard. So Gary, here's another next picture. There's lots of pictures. I love that about this. Gary with the Landell family, Jane, Jean Noel, Verana, and Nicholas in the backpack in 1991. Look at all of them. Then Nicholas now works with his family in Young Living on the farm in France. 24 years later, Nicholas teaches visitors about distillation, 2014. So Nicholas is the one in the backpack. And Nicholas was at our grand convention teaching everybody about the Provence, France farm. So this is all in the family. I love that. So Jean-Noël Landell, the French connection. In 1990, Gary was lecturing at a whole life expo in Anaheim, California, and had a group of members running the booth. Jean-Noël Landell was visiting from France, hoping to find someone to whom he could sell his lavender oil. Since 1985, Gary had been experimenting with oils and infusing them into his supplement formulations and had some of them with a few single oils on the display table. As Jean-Noël walked by the booth, he saw them and stopped to talk. He was still talking when Gary came off the stage. They quickly discovered a mutual interest, and Jean-Noël invited Gary to come to France for a visit, not thinking he would really come. 1 month later, Jean-Noël was absolutely shocked when Gary called him from Paris. Gary didn't know when he would travel, so he didn't contact Jean-Noël ahead of time to let him know he was coming. Jean-Noël and his wife, Jane, who is an American, welcomed Gary into their home, which was the beginning of a great and lasting friendship that opened so many doors for Gary in the world of French lavender growers. Their daughter was 4 years old, and their son, Nicholas, was just 6 months old. Jean-Noël and Jane had never used the oils in their home for their personal needs. And so, when Nicholas was crying and spitting up and would not go to sleep, they didn't know what to do. Gary held Nicholas in his lap and showed Jane how to massage his feet with lavender oil until he fell asleep. Gary also taught Jane how to do VitaFlex to enhance the use of the oils. Today, in 2015, Nicholas is a young man working with his father, Gary, and Young Living on various projects for Young Living and is learning everything he can. Little did Jean-Noël and Jane know that they would embark on a lifelong friendship with Gary that would involve many exciting adventures and discovery. So I have been here. Later on in the book, I'm sure they will talk about the farming more in Provence, France, but I have been here in the first Young Living cooperative French distillery in Simeone La Rotondi has now been upgraded with stainless steel and more efficient technology. Gary, Dave, and Jean-Noël load the cooker with lavender at the farm in France. Here you have it. Stories coming alive. Yes, yes, more pictures. I love this. So the distillery was in full operation when Gary started studying distillation in France in 1991. Let's see if you can see that one. Gary received some of his first distillery training with his portable French distiller, which he purchased in 2006 and is now on display at the farm in Mona, Utah. Okay, I want to pause right here and just say, if you're buying other oils that you think are as pure and as good, I would just like you to do the little research and see if the founder of your company and the CEO, the founder, owner, CEO, husband and wife, Gary and Mary Young, if yours has this type of experience. Do your people that you're getting your oils of, do you know them personally? Can you have a relationship with them? And do you know their experience in how they got started with oils? If you look into how they got started, you may find that it reverts back to Gary Young and Young Living in some way. You may find that. You may want to research and see, do they know what they're talking about when they're talking about oils, or are they just a middleman for moving product? So I just want to point that out right there. Okay, so moving on. Felipe, oh, I looked this one up and now Mabu, I think is how you say it, New Spiritual Insight. On one of Gary's trips to France in 1991, Jean-Noël introduced him to Felipe, who was writing and teaching about essential oils. Felipe had a laboratory and was conducting research on both the physical and emotional aspects of essential oils. Felipe opened Gary's, or Philippe, I should look this up again. Let me just say, I feel like I'm saying I do not know languages as well as I would like. So let me just see so I can do this without annoying everybody. Philippe opened Gary's mind to the emotional aspects of the oils, which Gary found fascinating since he believed the oils carried a spiritual essence that greatly influenced how an individual responded to the oils. Now, I have to tag my book right there because I also love the spiritual aspects, and I want to make sure that my book is tagged for this page. Okay, studying the emotional and spiritual characteristics of the oil was soul-stirring to Gary, opening another world of learning. I agree, it is. That's a great word, soul-stirring. Yeah. However, Philippe was not a farmer and had no distilleries, so he could not teach Gary anything about growing and distilling. But Philippe and Gary shared a mutual interest in discovering the unknown benefits of the oils. They became good friends, and Gary invited Philippe and his associates to come to Idaho to teach the members, which was a rewarding time for everyone. So here's pictures of Gary and Philippe. Philippe visited the farm in St. Mary's, and then Philippe opened Gary's mind to the emotional aspects of oils in 1991. Nice. Love this timeline. Marcel Espiau, mentor and friend. Gary traveled back and forth many times learning about France and the essential oil industry from Jean Noël. 1 year after Gary's first visit, Jean Noël introduced him to Marcel Espiau, the president of the Lavender Growers Association, who was not too open to or receptive to this curious American who kept asking questions. However, with time, Marcel could see how serious Gary was and eventually invited him to see his distillery. Nice work, Gary. Gary volunteered to work filling the firebox and doing anything that Marcel asked. Gary stayed late into the night keeping the firebox filled, and Marcel would then come to trade places with him until morning. Let's see if this story unfolds, because I've heard this story person to person, so I want to see what this says. Marcel began to trust Gary more and more and developed a friendship that was destined to last a lifetime. Marcel taught Gary everything he could, and Gary would often drive with him to take the lavender oil to the perfumeries in Grasse, France. It was amazing that even though they did not speak each other's language, they were able to communicate through working together and accomplishing the desired goal. That's pretty amazing. As Gary learned more about distillation, he began to visualize building his own distillery. Everybody laughed, and Marcel made jokes about the American who thought he could do what the French have done for hundreds of years. But for Gary, once the dream was there, it was as though it were already done. Do you live that way? Do you see your dream and act as though it's already done? That's how Gary mentors us. So here's some more pictures. Gary is sitting in front of Marcel at the French distillery. Cute group of guys there. And there is the distillery. Gary, Mr. Viaud, and Jean Noël talk about distillation. All right. Then Henry Viaud, working in his lab, 1991. So when I was in France with Young Living, I think it was 2012, might have been 11, we saw labs like this with all the stainless steel bottles and the cool writing and all that. Henry Viaud, the father of distillation. There was yet another teacher of distillation who Gary wanted to meet, Henry Viaud, who at that time was considered the father of distillation. He lived in the mountains of Provence, France, not far from Jean Noël, but he was not open to having visitors, especially curious Americans. However, Gary persisted, and one night, 5 years later, Mr. Viaud came to Jean Noël's house for dinner when Gary was there. In a very short but intense interview, Mr. Viaud asked Gary what essential oils meant to him. Well, this is good. Are you ready? Feeling tremendous pressure and with much anxiety, Gary said, quote, I believe that essential oils are the closest physical and tangible substance that carries the Spirit of God on earth. Pointing his finger at Gary, and in a dramatic tone of voice with a heavy French accent, he said, you are right, and anyone who messes with them should be treated like a criminal. Then he stood up, turned, and abruptly walked out the door. Can you imagine being Gary right then? Can you imagine having that type of mentor teacher that you dream to be with, you're on a mission to work with? Can you imagine what he was feeling right then? Jean Noel walked Mr. Viaud to his car, and when Jean Noel returned, he said to Gary, who was feeling very defeated, "Mr. Viaud wants you on his mountain at 6 a.m. It was an exhilarating moment for Gary that left him sleepless and with great anticipation. Gary spent many days with Mr. Viaud, cutting and harvesting wild lavender, thyme, and rosemary, and then distilling them. He had only two 1,500-liter cookers, so the distilling was slow. The days added up to weeks and then months as Gary traveled back and forth from the U.S., going up the mountain to Mr. Viaud's distillery to work. Between Mr. Viaud and Marcel, Gary could not have had better teachers. We feel blessed to have a teacher like Gary Young. And I just want to repeat that Gary quotes, "I believe that essential oils are the closest physical and tangible substance that carries the Spirit of God on earth." And as I read that, I grab my oil of rose from Young Living Essential Oils, and I use the inhalation method to take that in, sealing in this moment of reading this beautiful story, feeling amazingly blessed to have a master teacher like Gary Young, not only to teach us about essential oils, but to lead our company and live out the vision of getting the Spirit of God on earth in every household. I'm passionate about this, because when you smell them and you take them in and you use them, you feel it too. You feel it. I call them little bottles of love. Isn't that the work of being a messenger? Yeah. Just had to take a little moment with that. That's so big. And here is the little Mr. Viaud's 600-year-old stone house on the mountain plateau where Gary was tutored in the art of distillation. Isn't that beautiful? It's beautiful. So on this side is Jean Noel, Mr. Viaud, and Gary, serious camaraderie. Look at them all. They're in deep contemplation. Of course, Gary's taking that to his nose, training his nose, right? Powerful. Gary traveled all over France with Jean Noel, meeting growers and visiting distilleries. Jean Noel and Gary leased their first farm in 1992. Then in 1993, they found an abandoned government farm that had a lease purchase offering that seemed to be perfect for them. But after 2 years, when the time came to buy, there was just too much paperwork and the government was too difficult to work with, so Jean Noel started looking elsewhere. Over the length of 4 years, Gary traveled back and forth to France, spending as much time as he could studying and working in all aspects of the production, from planting to harvesting and to all the facets of the extraction process. Volunteering to help harvest, working in the distillery, and tending the firebox and boiler at night enabled him to study the cooking and distillation in detail. He made meticulous notes as he measured and drew plants. He learned everything he could with a knowing feeling inside that one day he would build his own distillery. One more picture on that page. Jean Noel and Gary at the second farm that he leased from the government in 1994. If you notice in all these pictures, Gary has a bottle of oil to his nose. I love that. It's like constantly smelling. So there you have that portion of today. 20 minutes. I hope you get to listen all the way through and learn this beautiful story. We'll continue next week reading D. Gary Young, the world leader in essential oils, and we'll help this story come alive. Thanks for watching today.